Good morning, everyone. As you can see, I must use the rail and get somebody to assist the old lady of the conference today. On behalf of the Talanoa Oceania ACP team, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Talanoa people, past and present, for their custodianship. It is also my privilege to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you today. To the High Commissioners, the academic scholars, presenters, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. I would like also to make a special acknowledgement of the founder of this Talanoa Forum, the Dr. Sione Habea, for his vision and continued support. This year, you may notice that we have run our program a little differently to previous years. In our efforts to follow our theme, come, learn, and live, we have attempted to engage our local islanders, professionals, academic leaders, and youth to come and share the stories and experiences so that we may learn from them. Our focus this year has been to highlight the opportunities that are available to our younger generation through the Talanoa of those presenters who will speak over the next 2 days. We hope that you will give them tools to build their lives and find greater success. As you would know, in any organization, association, or groups, the president receives all the glory for the work that has been done by the team in the background. I have been extremely lucky to have such a wonderful, motivated, and enthusiastic team to work with on this program. I would like to introduce some of them, and I know that maybe you have met most of them at the door. Nataniela Rita, who is our secretary. We have I'll just call their first names. More personal for all of us. Rowena, I think I can call her, she's the bank manager. For without her work and her heart searching for all the funds that we had to apply for, she is the one. So any of you who would like to get some money, Rowena is over here. We have a Stella David, who is our secretary, and she's at the back with the flower on her head. And we have Nicole, who is, of course, a roadwoman, and they're always late. Well, we have Kiri here. And we have Pat, who is our organizer in the program that we run today, and everything that we don't want to do, we give it to Pat. And for tonight, we have Betweli Baka, who is the showcase director. And of course, we have on my right hand here, the conch shell blower. There are also those who have worked tirelessly in the background, such as the parents of the young people who will be leading us in the showcase tonight, the various Pacific Island community groups which have come together and have generously given time and effort, and the caterers, of course, for which we will be enjoying their hospitality all day today. I'd also like to acknowledge the facilities that we are using. The ANU, the Henley Pool now that we are using, and also the outlet hall that we will be having the showcase tonight, and of course to our dear Minister Ivan Roberts. He's here with us, and we will be using the church and the hall and any facilities that we need tomorrow at the conference. So Ivan, thank you very much. They have all worked hard to make this conference a success. It is our aim that as you come and attend this conference, you will take something that is of a value. Again, I thank you all for coming and hope that you will gain something, no matter how small or big, from your attendance over the next couple of days. Ofalah yak malo.
And the traditional owners of this country. Kapitali modol makago, kapukore yung kufangay patak kufay Oceania, ay tamo fuwa ki efekau nada. Tenago do katoa. Maurio. Welcome to Talanoa Oceania. Nada has asked me to say a few words, and it's really not fair because any of the people here could have said something about Talanoa Oceania. But first of all, I want to thank these planning teams, Joanna, Nada, Nicole, Stella, and now I know there's Rowena, and I need to get to know her better now. But thank you for the plans and for bringing together this gathering. It's also great to come and meet in Canberra and at ANU, because many people don't know that it was at ANU in 2007 that there was the final push to organize Talanoa Oceania. It was a meeting of the Australia-New Zealand Association of Theological Schools held here at ANU. And the person who did the hardest push at that gathering was Winston Halapua, who is now the Bishop of Polynesia based in Fiji. And Winston sends his apologies, as well as Tuere from Fiji, and several others from other islands, from Tuvalu, Kiribati. They are not able to join us. But this is the 5th meeting of Talanoa Oceania. We have met in Parramatta and then went to Auckland University, came back to Parramatta, went to Massey University, and now here at ANU. Part of the reason why Talanoa Oceania moves around is so that nobody owns it. Talanoa Oceania is for everyone. This year, it's Canberra's Talanoa. They have owned it this year, and we'll see where it goes from next year. I'm not the only one who was involved in bringing together Talanoa. There are others, Winston, as I mentioned, and many others. And the story, the Talanoa of Talanoa, will be told at another time. But I want to share part of the dream, as Nada was saying. When we had that gathering here in 2007, there were many reasons why we should have a Talanoa gathering. The name just happened. It was, I know that there are people who do Talanoa model of research, Talanoa ways of economics even, that's coming out of Aotearoa, New Zealand. But there were many reasons. 3, I think, is important to reiterate at this occasion. Number 1, Talanoa Oceania wants to bring people together from different areas. And this team has brought us together today from, how many islands are represented here? We have Rotuma, that's for sure. Tongan, Fijian, Samoan, Niue, Aotearoa, Solomons, PNG, Timor, Cook Islands, Australia, Tasmania, It's great that we have Timor because I was at a gathering once and the indigenous Indonesians there tried to convince me that they are Polynesians. There are some similarities. I think culture is a very fluid thing. But that's one of the reasons why Talanoa Oceania came together, to provide an opportunity for us to come together with our different backgrounds, our different gifts. Second, I think is important to note is Talanoa Oceania is intended to show a different face of the Pacific Islanders. We are known as people who can play sport. We can move furniture. Yeah, that's right. And we can break laws. There are many things that we are known for, but we want to see another side to our people. We have gifts. We can also talk. Sometimes we talk too much. We can also write. We can also present. And so Talanoa Oceania has produced 2 volumes out of conference papers. The 2008 papers have been published, Talanoa Ripples, and then Talanoa Rhythms from 2009. 2010 and 11 are a little slow, but I leave to this team to carry us through. So that's the second reason. We need people to realize that as Pacific Islanders, we can shape things with our bodies, but we can also think. We have ideas that we want to share. And the third reason I think is important. We wanted to provide opportunities for our people to be able to gain confidence in presenting at conferences like this one. The 2 youngest presenters at Talanoa in the past were only 13 years old. There was, and she's here, at one point she was 12, and I tried to encourage Thierry to present at Talanoa, because she could have broken the record and reduced it from 13 to 12 at that time. But it's still there. Talanoa Oceania is open to academics. Talanoa Oceania is open to politicians and ministers and everyone, but it's also open to ordinary people. 13-year-olds are welcome. 2 years ago, we had a very moving closing presentation by someone who was struck by polio. And the challenges that our people have with the shame of the physical bodily presence is something that we welcome in Talanoa Oceania. So this is an opportunity, hopefully, for people to come, and I like the theme, to come, to listen, to learn. Not just for, and what I'm going to say now is going to be insulting to some of you, but please forgive me. Not just to learn from the Palangi, but also to learn from each other. We need to learn from our people. We tend to think that it's not really real until it's a Western thing. We need to realize that it's really real when we start with the conch shell. And then we talk about island things. That's real as well. And we need to be able to show others outside of rooms like this that the people of the Oceania, the people of the Pacific, have something to share. And your being here today as presenters, as panels, as who you are, is fulfilling that wish. So I thank all of you for the team for forming the program for this year, but also for everyone for coming. And hopefully, I'm sure we will have a great time in the next 2 days. So, malo abito ng valevu.
And we now move from Talanoa as a noun to Vei Talanoa in Fijian, which is a verb, to discuss, to talk about issues. And we are going to have our first plenary session, which we have called a plenary Talanoa, to capture Talanoa. And the topic this morning is the Pacific Seasonal Worker Scheme, which I think is something of great importance to many islands across the Pacific, some of whom are already part of the scheme, some who are aspiring to be part of the scheme, some who may feel they've been marginalized from the scheme. And these are certainly the issues that we want to talk about in our plenary Talanoa. And so I would like to introduce our panel this morning, our distinguished panel, and we're very pleased that we have members of the Diplomatic Corps based here in Canberra. This is one of the things that we wanted to capture in our Talanoa in Canberra, because it's something that makes Canberra unique in Australia, that we do have access to our members of the Diplomatic Corps. So this panel is being chaired by Dr. Roani Nshu of the ANU. I'll invite her to come forward. If you haven't worked it out already, she's from Samoa. And the members of the panel, we have with us this morning Mr. Ismenio Nito of the Timor-Leste High Commission. We also have with us Mr. Falikava Kupu of the High Commission of the Kingdom of Tonga here in Canberra, and Ms. Cheryl Brown-Iraba, currently the officer in charge of the Fiji High Commission here in Canberra. She's also the first secretary there. And from New Zealand, not to be outdone, New Zealand/Samoa, we have Malapiai Dr. Yeti Lima, who is a specialist in evaluation from New Zealand, and he's also part of our panel this morning. So I'll now invite our distinguished panelists to come forward and take their seats, and Roani will introduce the panel, and there will be time for questions, plenty of time for questions at the end of the session.
Malo lava le soifua mama. Malo lava le soifua manuia malangi mama. So my name is Roani, and I'm representing the Pacific Institute. I'm not too sure that Suana read the Canberra Times this morning, but the headline read that the Bank of Roani is officially bankrupt. So if you're looking for money, please take them. I have the extreme pleasure and privilege of chairing this session with our dignitaries from the High Commissions. The seasonal worker program, for those who don't know, was launched in July this year. It's modelled on the back of the New Zealand Regional Seasonal Employment Scheme, which is why we have Te Rima. We also have a range of voices that are representing the different countries in the Pacific. So we have Tonga, so Whanakava, who have been part of the RSE scheme in New Zealand, and also are very instrumental in the building of the seasonal worker program in Australia today. We have Ismenio, who is from East Timor, and East Timor is a special category that was added to the Pacific Seasonal Worker Program. And we also have Cheryl from the Fiji High Commission, who I guess are not currently part of the Seasonal Worker Program, but she might be able to suggest some models in how Australia and Fiji may be able to work together in this particular scheme. And also finally, Dr. Yeti Lima, who is from New Zealand, and he will talk about the RSE scheme. We're also very lucky because he did the evaluation, and he'll be presenting the things that didn't make the official report. So it's always good to have those hidden things. So I think we'll start off with Cheryl Brown. Sorry, no, Falcava. So Mr. Falikava Kupu is currently the first Secretary of the Tongan High Commissioner in Australia. He has had extensive experience as a public servant, having performed various roles in the Tongan Ministry of Labour, Commerce and Industries, the Prime Minister's Office, Immigration Department and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. He graduated from the University of South Pacific in Fiji with a BA in Economics, also from the University of Strathclyde in Scotland with an MBA, and from the University of Bradford in England with a postgraduate diploma in Industrial Project Appraisal, and also has a postgraduate diploma in Small Business Consultancy from the University of Philippines. So please welcome Mr. Falikava.
Kore te ke ufana mo e whatako tau tēnā o si ka awa te pare se nuri so ana muan ka atake whanaka te kato. I just want to acknowledge the people in the land in which we are putting on to have this program today. And I I do welcome you, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to thank the President and the members of the Talanoa for giving me the opportunity here to speak on the subject. Mind you, the seasonal worker scheme has been initiated on a trial basis since 2008. It's been rolling on the 5th year now, and I have been asked to speak on that for 15 minutes. It's a 5-year program. I do hope that I might enlighten you on the program. As being the first speaker, I thought I'd just putting together a brief history of the scheme, and then perhaps following me, my colleagues and all that, could really go into the real core of the program. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think you all know the Pacific Ocean in general, it covers about 1/3 of the world. And yet, we have so many island nations scattered around within this 1/3 of land area, sea area rather, and it has very diverse problems, which I will not go into details. But mind you, many of these islands make up the Pacific region. Either they are small in size, small in population, and also they have dispersed in terms of location, which is making it very difficult for them to travel. Not only that, but catch up with international trade aspects, and also to learn technology to catch up with the rest of the world. 1/3 of the Pacific region lives in poverty, and about 56% of the population is under the age of 25. Unemployment and underemployment is endemic. It's not that people don't want to work. The problem is the lack of employment opportunities within respective Pacific islands. I think the Pacific Seasonal Worker Scheme came in a timely manner, and this is one of the avenue or one of the options opening up in attempting to solve some of these problems. I shall touch upon on a brief basis about the Pacific Seasonal Workers Program. And mind you, there are 2 phases to this program. One is a pilot program, which was launched back in 2008, ending in June the 30th of 2012. And from then on, they launched what you call the Pacific Seasonal Workers Permanent Program. The current program, like I said, which was launched as from July the 1st, 2012, will go on for another 4 years. From then on, let's hope that it will be ongoing, and that will be add-on other nations that will benefit from this scheme. The Pacific Seasonal Workers Pilot Scheme, like I said, was introduced in August 2008. Pilot was designed to examine whether a seasonal worker program would contribute to economic development in Pacific countries through seasonal workers' employment experience, remittances, and training, and the benefit to growers in the Australian horticulture industry who demonstrated they cannot source labour source internally within Australia. The pilot scheme allows about 2,500 visas to be issued to seasonal workers from participating Pacific Island countries. During the pilot scheme startup phase, the Australian government established what we call a memorandum of understanding with respective participating countries of the pilot scheme. This included Kiribati, Papua New Guinea, Tonga, and Vanuatu. On the 8th of September 2011, Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, announced that Nauru, Samoa, Solomon Islands, and Tuvalu have been invited to also participate in the pilot scheme. A limited extension of the pilot with East Timor to the tourism industry was also announced, and this was to be launched in Perth, Western Australia. Only approved employers can recruit Pacific and East Timor seasonal workers. Recruitment is generally from the participating country's government agency, work-ready pool database through. Therefore, the approved recruitment agent arrangement was directly dealing with the employees. The seasonal worker program. On the 18th of December 2011, the Australian government announced that a pilot would become an ongoing seasonal worker program commencing on the 1st of July 2012. Seasonal workers who are citizens of 9 countries were included in this scheme. This included East Timor, Kiribati, Nauru, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. The Australian government also undertake a small-scale 3-year trial of this program, which is expected to end in June 2015. And this is in regard to labor mobility arrangements in other industries. Meaning to say, the first pilot scheme more or less specialized in horticulture, whereas the current scheme had opened other avenues as well. A total of about 1,550 visas are available for seasonal workers to be employed, like I said, in other additional areas, like cotton and cane growers, aquaculture, accommodation providers in tourism industry. Total number of visa places of seasonal workers for this 4-year ongoing period was earmarked at 12,000. Number of workers recruited from each country will be demand-driven and determined by the employers. As with the pilot scheme, the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations continues as the lead agency in implementing seasonal worker program. Just on a brief basis, the current program allows one to be employed minimum of 14 weeks up to a maximum of 7 months, exceptional with 1 extra month to 7 months. As I had said before, there are 9 participating countries, as I had previously stated. Particular reference to Tonga, the ongoing scheme would have been beneficial. We have had about 900 Tongans who had participated in the pilot scheme and also the current scheme that had started in July the 1st. Mind you, I think just this week, I had conveyed to Tonga approval of additional Tongan workers for about 150. Just this week. I think in the case of Tonga, we specialize in the horticulture area, mainly in the area of Western Australia and also Queensland. I'll briefly touch on the advantage of the scheme, Pacific countries, and in particular reference to Tonga. The first group of Pacific workers to take part in the pilot and seasonal worker scheme arrived from Tonga in 2009. They were a group of 50 workers who headed to Robin Vale in Victoria to fill a labor shortage in the almond industry. 3 years down the track, we have more than, like I said before, between 900 to about 1,200 workers that have been recruited under this scheme. Apart from that, there are also days available on recruitment from Vanuatu, East Timor, Kiribati, Papua New Guinea, and Samoa. You can go to the Department of Employment. They have a website there which gives you all the data breakout in each country. As I said before, the number of places of seasonal workers confirmed for this permanent program is 12,000 over 4 years. Areas of work has been broadened from only agriculture to include other areas that I have mentioned, like cotton, sugarcane, aquaculture, and accommodation. I think in the case of East Timor, they specialize on tourism accommodation. These are areas of need for Australian employers in industries that will provide seasonal workers with new skills that will benefit them when they go back to their home countries. I think you may be aware that another similar kind of scheme is going on in New Zealand. And there's one that goes on here in Australia. Just for information, there has been some kind of agreement that if you are on the New Zealand scheme, then it's allowed to come under the Australian scheme. So you have people working, like for those that go from Tonga and work in New Zealand, they cannot come and work on the scheme to Australia. I think the fundamental reason that the Australian government established a program was to support the increased development of the Pacific Islands and East Timor. In terms of the long-term development of the Pacific, which largely depend on regional integration and sustainable economic development. Likewise, exploring and tap into commercial opportunities for Australia. Labour mobility, therefore, is an important part of Australia's Pacific engagement strategy to help Tonga and other Pacific islands make use of their biggest resources. I think under the seasonal workers program, Tongan workers have the opportunity to earn Australian dollars, which benefit themselves and their families, also their communities, and to a large extent, this is through remittances that goes back to Tonga. It is hard-earned money that helps support families and contributes to the economic development in home countries. Seasonal workers have used their earnings to pay off family members' education, including those that goes to overseas universities, assist with financing community development projects, etc. When workers return home, they also build houses for themselves, invest in small holdings, small businesses like taxi operation, as creating employment for others, and providing positive catalytic effects on the economy. Let's not forget also the valuable skills and experience that workers gain through working here, take with them home. And these skills will stay with them forever. On the other side of that point, the advantage of the scheme, the host country of Australia, not only good for the employers, but it's also good for the industry in general. The pilot scheme in the seasonal workers program are successful because they genuinely help address a significant problem for Australia's earmarked industries. Availability of workers, especially during harvesting periods, is essential to the success of Australian farm, as farmers have been struggling to get enough good, reliable workers to meet their demands. We see a pattern that there is a rapid increase in the number of Tongans being employed in this program. As I said to you before, the places, the visas is only up to a limit of about 12,000. So other members of the member countries perhaps be fair to say that we should start utilizing these visas before the 4 years is up. Estimated that workers bring in an average of about 30% additional productivity to the farms that they're working in. The key ingredient for success is that employers have treated their workers with respect. Under the pilot scheme and now the seasonal worker program, we're seeing a genuine, warm, personal relationship develop, linking Australia in our regional community, and this is built on year after year. It's a good thing in terms of bilateral relationship between Australia and Pacific Islands. The Australian and the Tongan government, alongside Australian industries, have worked together to create the best condition that both workers and employers get the most out in our permanent seasonal workers program. And it will continue to build an understanding and friendship between Australia and Pacific Islands, as in the case of Tonga. There's been problems being reported to us in the Flag Mission in regard to launching the program, but at this point of time I can say it's very, very minimal. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Ismenia Martins Silva. He was born and grew up in Timor-Leste. Under the Indonesian occupation, he attended the University of East Java, Indonesia, and eventually after Timor-Leste reached its independence, he had the opportunity to do his master's degrees in International Community Development of the Asian Pacific from the Victoria University of Melbourne. In addition, Ismenia has also had the opportunity to do short courses at the University of Lisbon in Portugal, and he also has extensive experiences working in the international aid sector, starting from the United Nations in 1999. He is currently the Labour and Education Attaché for the East Timor Embassy. So welcome, Ismenia.
Thank you, Rani. First of all, I will also acknowledge the traditional owner of this land, their presence and past, and we also extend our gratitude for the organizing committee for running and the team for giving us the opportunity to share our experience on this scheme. And also some of our colleague from the embassy, our former Minister of Education, who's currently doing his PhD at ANU, colleague from DIVAR, Department for Employment, Education and Workplace Relations. Now, first I have to apologize that since English is my fourth language, and I hope I can articulate it much more clear later on. And also being the second presenter, of course, the first presenter actually mentioned everything. I'm not sure what all the notes that I have, it's actually all been covered. But I'll try to elaborate some of the specific experience that we have, that these teamers have, being the newest in the program. So perhaps I'd like to start with the challenges. And then later I'll try to actually end up with some of the successes and future recommendations. Now, first of all, I'd like to ask also who are, today there's some information that actually been given by Mr. Cooper as the first presenter. So, but apart from that, before, how many of you that actually are aware or know about this program? Please raise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. All right, now, as mentioned by Mr. Cooper, the first presenter, that Timor has just recently joined the program early this year, and we've been given an opportunity to be part of it as the pilot scheme. We've been focused on accommodation sector, accommodation provider. And so far we only have about 12 of our seasonal workers, mainly in Western Australia, in Broome, where so far we have received feedback that most of our workers, half of our workers have received quite outstanding performances, mainly coming from the biggest employers such as the Cato Beach as a 5 stars resort in Broome. So I think this is a very good sort of a motivation for us, for our workers, or future workers, that actually we can perform well. Now, the challenge that we have so far is that I think we've been, you know, and by the way, so far I'm the only labor attaché under this scheme. You know, Timor-Leste has given them such a priority, so they've assigned me to be specifically looking after this program. And apart from my education role to look after students in Australia. So I had the opportunity to travel around over Australia, meet all the employers, the growers, and some of the labor sending agencies who also play a very active role. And we basically, you know, I just met, recently I met one of the employers saying, man, basically your role sounds like you're a salesperson, you know. And I said, no, not only that, you know, apart from actually promoting, you know, marketing our workers, you know, my job is actually to make sure that, you know, they are properly, you know, the welfare, you know, working with the employers, working with the communities, and working with all, you know, Australian people. Now, we, fortunately, East Timor, so far we have about, since the early years of our independence, we gave the, you know, priority to Australia, to RMC here, to establish relation between people to people. And so far we have established about 50 friendship groups or sister cities throughout Australia. So that is one of the sort of, you know, our milestone for us to actually make sure when we have our people in Australia, this, you know, the Australian community can also assist us in making sure that, you know, they're all living, you know, to engage themselves with the community, so that we can have these people and our Timorese workers can actually feel like they are in home. They are at home. So I think that's one of the things that we actually put as a priority. So apart from that, we also build our relations with the Indigenous community. So just to share the experience that we have with in Western Australia, in Broome, we build our, you know, unlike other friends from the Pacific Island countries, that we have such a strong relationship with the church, local churches, and Indigenous communities in that particular area in Broome. And later on, they actually they had, you know, welcoming us officially, and in fact they also provide. They've given us a land, you know, for Timorese people back in Broome, but we have to you know, think about how to really utilize the land properly, and we know there are certain challenges with that. And that leads me to my first challenge that we have for this scheme is accommodation for the workers. Now, we have, you know, as our first presenter mentioned, that this scheme is actually provides such a, you know, important opportunity for us. I think we're looking at this program as a win-win solution, and we know that this is part of the aid. I think the most effective way to actually giving aid to developing countries, which is, you know, not just giving money, but then bringing people to learn the skills, and they have certain benefits that actually, you know, for us, you know, it's a great opportunity. However, if I've traveled to all the regions, even to, you know, I have to drive for a couple of hours, and what I found that, you know, they said, Ismaili, we want you to come. You know, great, you know, we'd like to have Timorese to come to Australia, you know, given that we have such a long history since World War II, and, you know, Timorese people, you know, we have Northern history, and fantastic. So, but then, now the problem that we have here is that, you know, there's no accommodation for the workers. You know, the federal government put a certain criteria that we should have a proper or standard accommodation for the workers. Now, I think, yes, we have 12,000 visas available. 10,000, over 10,000 is for horticulture across Australia. But something, you know, but then, you know, we also have to think, you know, who's going to invest with the accommodation. Some of the growers, we have different size of growers. Some of them are quite small, and they said, oh, we can't do this. So this is one of the challenges that we're facing. Secondly, is some of the workers, some of the growers, employers, they said to us, well, I think being an approved employer, it's quite a challenge because, given that our past experience, we had, those backpackers, the working visa holiday students, coming from Europe, coming from everywhere. I don't have to care about where they live, how they transport themselves, They just come on the door, knock, and they say, okay, here's the opportunity, go for it. But then through, with the scheme, of course, they have to go through certain processes which might take some time. And we, as a salesperson, we have to convince them. And of course, we have received quite extensive support from the federal government. But yes, we have to spend some time and energy, which I love it. I feel like myself an ambassador, by the way. My ambassador is very active. We both travel like the Island Brothers in the 60s, 70s. We love it, and we have to go to a place where there's no transport. We have to find our friend, and then we travel along the way and find the growers. Now, so given that, I think something that I believe the challenges also been faced by our colleagues, and I know hopefully by next year, our brothers and sisters from Fiji can both participate. So we have to consider these two things. In addition, so then I think we came up with something that we thought, okay. We said to the growers, we said, all right, we have labor standing agencies. We have these people that can help you. But also the challenge is, another challenge with the labor standing agencies, and being a teamer, we're very frank, because I know some of you as an academics, and you wanted to hear this, I hope I'm not, too honest, but honest is good, sometimes you're trying to actually bring ideas and how can we solve this. So with labor standing agencies, we spoke to the growers. Sometimes they said, most of them, they said, okay, yes, good. We've had experience with labor standing agencies, but then some of them have actually asked us too much. They've asked the community, they've asked about 35 to 40% of their fee. That leads us to a big issue with our workers, because imagine if we have, in horticulture industry, of course, you have a very short time, very short season. You can season, it depends on what type of fruit it is. If it's cherry or, sometimes it only, needs about 2-3 weeks, right? So imagine if we have our workers come in a very short season. Yes, the wages is following the Australian standard, but then mind you that our workers have to pay their own everything, health insurance, transport costs, accommodation. So it's a big challenge. With the accommodation sector, with our 12 workers, most of them, they took home the money that they have. Was actually 5,000, 6,000. And Timor, we're using US dollars as our currency. So I think, but then what we suggest to the growers, to the farmers associations, to say, okay, how about, you guys within the association work together, perhaps we take these workers from one place after they do the picking, they can move around from one place to the others. That will help, perhaps, I think helping each other. So you don't have to taking time to actually, after this, this one grower and then the other grower have to work on needing to recruit new recruitments or etc. So, Another challenge that we also found, that I found during my trip traveling around Australia, is that I happened to meet many, I don't know the numbers, maybe hundreds of workers that actually not part under the scheme. They're cash in hand people. I won't call it illegal, but no, cash in hand. Hundreds of them in fruit pickings. So, yes, 12,000 visas are fantastic. Now, can we compete with these cash in hand people? I think between us and the brothers and sisters from the Pacific Island countries who are under the scheme, fantastic. We're not competing each other. We actually help each other. We give our potentials to Australian people, say that we, islanders people, we can work, even though we have our island time. But here, no. Because we, in our pre-departure briefing or training back in our home country, we stressed that out. Yeah. So I think this is something that our, the challenges, that most of the challenges that we face. And I travel like once a month. Like next few days I'll be in South Australia, and then I'll continue to Western Australia, and then I'll end up at the end of this year will be in Queensland. So I speak based on experiences. I have met about hundreds of employees within 6 months. So I came with my family. My wife is really angry with me all the time because I never stay here in Canberra. But it's worth it. So, right. Now, but then, what makes this so successful to Timor? Yes, the opportunity. Opportunity for what? For proving ourselves that yes, we fought for 5 centuries against colonialism, but it's worth it. Our people can work hard, and we unlike other brothers and sisters from the Pacific, that yes, the advantages are there, fantastic, the opportunity is there. So now we just have to fight and work with with the federal government, with the growers, with all employers, saying okay, let's hopefully within the next 3 or 4 years, because for horticulture it's 4 years, for other sectors such as accommodation, sugar cane, cotton, it's only for 2 years. And yes, so far we work very closely and to promote and do marketing. I'm about to suggest to the federal government that we need, under this program, we need a goodwill ambassador to promote this program. So I'm thinking, I'm suggesting someone that also a friend of Timor, that also advocate for marginalized people, a great singer, Paul Kelly, to be a goodwill ambassador for this program, and hopefully we can work. So I'm actually, I haven't spoken to Diva officially, but I've mentioned some of these ideas, so that this program actually, I know that sometimes federal government is sort of trying not to promote the program too much, because there are reasons, there are issues. But mind you that, as you know, there's the program, we only bring workers based on the demand from the growers, who, by the way, they cannot find local workers, Australian workers, to fulfill that demand. So then they will invite us to come in and then help each other through this scheme. Okay, so I think that's all, and I apologize if there's any inconvenience from my speech, and I apologize for my frankness and honesty. Thank you very much.
Cheryl Brown-Irava, who is the officer in charge and first secretary of the High Commission of the Republic of Fiji in Canberra. Prior to her arriving in Canberra in March 2018, she served at the Fiji Embassy in Washington, D.C. for 5 years as second secretary. She received diplomatic training in Japan and Malaysia. So welcome, Cheryl. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Before we start, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we live today, the Talanoa people, and pay respects to the elders both past and present. Well, good morning, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to share some of my personal views on the Pacific Seasonal Worker Scheme. I wish to just add from the outset that these views are not necessarily those subscribed to by the government of Fiji. The announcement of the new Pacific Seasonal Worker Scheme in December last year was seen as a very positive move by the Australian government towards extending its wider program of engagement and cooperation between Australia, the Pacific and East Timor to promote economic growth. The scheme was promoted and is widely accepted, I would think, as a win-win program that will allow the Australian horticultural employers to access a proficient and productive labour force from the Pacific to meet their demands, and particularly in the peak seasons, whilst also improving incomes for Pacific Island countries. Due to Australia's prevailing foreign policy and Fiji's suspension from the Pacific Island Forum since May 2009, unfortunately for both our countries, Fiji has not been a part of the initial pilot program and remains currently excluded from the current arrangement. I wish to suggest that given the aims of the scheme in targeting assistance towards Pacific Islander communities, not necessarily Pacific governments, consideration for the future inclusion of Fiji in the scheme is therefore warranted. Inclusion of Fijian workers in the scheme would primarily assist improve the economic opportunities for the wider community. Excluding Fijian workers on the basis of political relations with the government of Fiji is a policy which is, I would think, is unfair on the people and poorly targeted. I'd be very happy to meet with Dira later. Who is from Dira? Yes, later to discuss this and opportunities in the future. But in spite of the somewhat strained bilateral relations, Australian aid to Fiji has more than doubled in the health and education sectors in the last 5 years, with AUSAID's policy being that Australian aid is delivered where and how it would most assist the people of Fiji. The Australian government has continued with extending preferential market access provisions under the Spartica trade agreement, and specifically to Fiji, on the basis that exclusion from these programs would target and be hurtful to the people of Fiji. Therefore, in this vein, with the inclusion of Fijian workers in the seasonal worker scheme, I would think is justifiable. Just on future areas where the scheme may be bettered or improved upon, fully fledged labour mobility programs, not subject to seasonality, would be the, I think, ultimate goal to help the Pacific. And I would think in the aged care sector, where Australians' ageing population would warrant assistance in aged care services. Also, likewise in childcare. So these are two areas which I think we have a comparative advantage in the Pacific, and where it would result in a win-win situation for all. Areas of assistance, I would think that AUSAID could direct some of its official development assistance to capacity building in areas which support the labour needs of Australia, example, aged care and childcare, as this would ensure the self-sustainability of the program, very important, and ensure that the labour mobility scheme remains independent of trade agreements. So it is a scheme which we would hope would be something that would continue into the future without any market testing or subject to relations between governments, etc. Overall, the Pacific Seasonal Workers Scheme is a wonderful initiative which deserves the full commitment of all stakeholders to ensure its longevity and the full economic benefits flow to the people of the Pacific. Thank you.